Throughout history, Mao Zedong has been demonized by people. People have compared Mao to Hitler and Stalin. And while I too believe that Mao has done some inexcusable actions, Mao has still done things for China. People wonder why Mao has done such weird actions, such as creating a self-sustaining economy and killing the rightists, persecuting the intellectuals, etc. So I found to find out why Mao has done all these things, we must look at Mao in a historical perspective. Mao's actions have been based off four separate dynasties. So without further ado, let's get in. Let's look at Mao through a historical perspective. The Han Dynasty has long been said to be the golden age of ancient China. Its agrarian-based economy created one of the strongest and most powerful dynasties. It has been said that the Han Dynasty is one of the strongest dynasties in China. The Han Dynasty is the golden age of ancient China. Likewise, you can say that what Mao did set up the stage for the golden age in modern China. Both Han and Mao cemented the building blocks for what China would build on to create an even stronger history. The Han Dynasty was very similar to Mao in its aspects of communism. You can see that the Han Dynasty showed the first aspects of socialism, where it was an agrarian-based economy and people were encouraged to work. It had a spam point of view where scholars were prioritized, but more so than that, just like the Han, the peasants were at the highest. Merchants and artisans always came second, and you can see that in Mao's foreign policy and why Mao created a self-sufficient, self-sustaining economy. So, Mao adopted ideas from the Han Dynasty, such as communism, also Western ideas such as Marxism, and blended them to create this beautiful economy that Mao had. The Qin Dynasty is like the Mao in its social environment. The Qin Dynasty encouraged a philosophy known as legalism. Legalism was created in the 100 schools of thought. Legalism essentially made it so that people were obliged to follow by the law or they would face harsh punishments. The head of the Qin Dynasty was Qin Shi Huangdi. Qin Shi Huangdi is very similar to Mao in that they both were very strict. They both persecuted people that were. The Qin Dynasty and Mao's era were very similar. The Qin Dynasty created a social environment which encouraged legalism. Legalism was a very strict set of laws which people had to abide by or they'd face harsh punishment. Qin Shi Huangdi was a very paranoid man. He was notorious for being worried that the people around him would kill him. Qin Shi Huangdi, like Mao, would kill or send people to work that he believed were a threat to his organization. You can see Mao did the same thing in Deng Xiaoping when he forced Deng Xiaoping to work for 4 years shoveling pig feces, or when he killed all the rightists in the anti-rightist movements. Mao obliterated anyone that he found a threat to him, just like Qin did. In that aspect, both Mao and the Qin Dynasty are similar because they used their policy and their strict laws to create an environment where nobody would go up against Mao. And that's why it created such a strict era, and you can even see it in aspects of today, where China has one of the lowest crime rates and one of the strict punishments. We all are very strongly against censorship within China. However, that may be advantageous because all those government officials that monitor websites like Weibo still keep people in line and create China and make sure China is the powerhouse that it still is. Mao is so much so similar to Qin Shi Huangdi that he himself said that he was similar to Qin Shi Huangdi. I found an article on BBC where Mao says to his party cadres, "You intellectuals revile us for being Qin Shi Huangs. However, we have surpassed Qin Shi Huang 100-fold." This I find very interesting because this is strong evidence that Mao actually draws his ideas and his views from Qin Shi Huang. And it also shows that Qin Shi Huang is notorious. It shows that intellectuals demonized Qin Shi Huangdi, which is interesting because intellectuals today demonize Mao. But when we look at Qin Shi Huangdi, after so many eras have passed, we overlook the killing and we look at the beauty, the magnificence of what he did in his dynasty, which, just like Mao, only lasted and started with him, because Qin Shi Huangdi, following his death, fell. The dynasty lasted for a few months and the Qin dynasty was gone after that. A eunuch came into power and his stupid son came into power. However, following that was the Han Dynasty, which was the golden age for China. Likewise, Mao stepped down from power. And when Mao stepped down from power, Deng Xiaoping, his former right-hand man, created a society with classes, a society that had open trade to the 8 foreign devils that had caused a century of humiliation, and Deng Xiaoping went to a capitalistic society with lots of secondary goods. This was not good for China. China experienced the century of humiliation. This was during the Qing dynasty. Following the Opium War, China was opened up to the 8 foreign devils, one of them being Japan, a country which during the Song dynasty wanted to emulate China in its greatness. The 8 foreign devils had got so advanced in its technology that China couldn't handle them, and they went in and cut China like a piece of pie. Capitalism and democracy are both very Western ideas. Mao obviously would not go towards those if his only perspective of the West was when those 8 Western devils came in and cut up his country, when they set his country back and humiliated it, when they looted the Forbidden City, where eras of history has been kept. People often wonder about Mao's foreign policy, why Mao created a self-sufficient economy. Well, let's look at it this way. During the Qing dynasty, China was cut up into 8 pieces. China was destroyed. Everything was looted. The beauty was gone. Thousands of years of history was destroyed, just like that, by the foreign devils. Now, why would Mao go towards a concept that was encouraged by these foreign devils, such as capitalism and democracy? And more so than that, he wanted to have a self-sufficient and self-reliant economy that did not need the help of these foreign devils. That's why Mao created a self-sufficient economy. He collectivized the land, and really brought China back to its former glory. Mao's new utopian society was so much more successful than it could have been under capitalism that they managed to fight America to a standstill. The true tragedy about this was that following this, Deng Xiaoping, like I've said before, came in and reversed all of this and invited the foreign devils back in to trade with them to benefit China. And the status of women played a big role in Mao's agenda. Mao wanted women to be active members in the community, both economically and socially. That is why women were encouraged to be in the workforce and were granted more rights than before. Now we must look at the Tang Dynasty, which could be considered the golden age for females. During the Tang Dynasty, women got the right to remarry, and widows got the right to have land. It's not a coincidence that both Mao's era and the Tang Dynasty were golden ages also. So obviously there must have been a correlation with the freedom of women and this. The Tang Dynasty had advances in the fields of politics, culture, and social structure. It sounds familiar because Mao did the same. Through the freedom of women, it affected history, and I found an interesting statistic that showed that China was closer to Western Europe than any other third world country in terms of women in the workforce. It's quite amazing how China, which was a third world country, which had been ransacked, looted, and destroyed by the foreign devils, the women still had rights. Now, why is this relevant? Why must we look at Mao in a historical perspective? Through tunnel vision, your average person just looks at the numbers. They look at, wow, Mao killed a lot of people. Mao turned his back during the famine. But we look at it from a different aspect. We look at it for what Mao did to the future generation. One day, it's possible that one day I'm going to be sitting in front of this computer having an online job interview for a job. And one day, my children may be attending a school where Chinese is taught as a first language. It's very possible. Look. That's why we must understand why China is a powerhouse. What Mao did. Mao's success was drawn from successful and failed dynasties. Mao saw what worked and what didn't, and he combined it with concepts such as Marxism and communism to create this utopian society. It may not have worked very well. Mao's economic plans may have not succeeded. However, what lives on is Mao's legacy. What Mao did to China will never leave. Mao may be the leading producer in the world for goods, but more so than that, it's the Chinese mindset. It's what Mao and ancient China brought. Mao, in my opinion, was simply a blending of all of what China had, all those years of history into one man. This one man led China into a beautiful era. And now, The new hegemon of the world one day will soon be China. Hopefully in my lifetime. Thank you for listening.